Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Around the Big Ten podcast. I am Mark Givler, joined as always by Chip Minnick. We have a loaded full slate of Big Ten games this weekend, 9 games, all in league, everybody in action. Going to be a good one. Maybe is it the best slate of the season? It's up there.
It's getting there. It's getting there. I don't want to be that premature. I will say this much, Mark. I think that we are going to get better definition in terms of where things are within the conference. This is just another great weekend for helping define how things are going to shape up eventually.
Yeah. And things will kick off on Friday night. Rutgers at Washington. Washington currently a 10.5-point home favorite. Rutgers still looking for its first Big Ten win. Washington coming off the kind of borderline miraculous comeback last week against Maryland. They return home, trying to start a brand new home winning streak after Ohio State snapped its 22-gamer a couple weeks ago. 10.5, that feels about right, maybe. Or, I mean, kind of how you view this. You know, Rutgers has been competitive, but not good enough yet. And Washington's looked very explosive on offense at times, but then at times has, obviously against a great Ohio State defense didn't do well, but even against Maryland in the first almost 3 quarters last week, struggled. How do we take that from Washington, what we've seen recently once the schedule has become a little more difficult?
I like the way you put that, borderline miraculous. That's a very, I think, appropriate description and definition as to what happened last week for Washington when they were at Maryland. But as far as answering your question, I think Washington is still learning what they need to do to be considered one of the I don't want to say one of the top teams, because like I said, I think we have a pretty good idea in terms of who the top teams are, but they're fighting to be in that second tier. And I think that's kind of what their evolution is. I think they've got a lot of great pieces, especially on offense. And Rutgers offensively, when it comes to Ethan Kaliakmanis, I'm not as sold on him as others are. I think he's made strides, but I think ultimately Washington, the home field, I'm kind of skeptical in terms of with the travel, how Rutgers is going to respond. So I think Washington, they're going to take hopefully the lessons learned from last week and use this as another stepping stone to, like I said, to kind of establish himself in that second tier of teams within the conference.
Yeah, I kind of like Washington here in terms of the spread. I kind of like Washington to cover. So obviously I like them to win. This Rutgers team is not bad, but they're just not as good defensively.
Right.
They're doing things a little differently this year. They're having to. The defense hasn't picked them up quite as much, I don't feel like, this year as they have maybe in a couple of years past. The offense seems a little better, but maybe not as capable of grinding games out. And, it's not a group that seems to be playing particularly good complementary football right now. And that's kind of been Schiano's staple the last few years is defense, running game, special teams, like kind of marrying that all together. And this year it just seems like, well, the defense, gives up a bunch of points at times, is giving up explosives. The offense seems to have maybe a better passing game than it's had the last couple of years, but are they able to grind games out with Pacheco and Monangai like they have in the past? Not really. Doesn't feel like that. So they're kind of a little bit different of a unit, a different look this year. And I just don't love that combination going out to Washington. We've seen the travel effects of the new Big Ten. It's been ugly for teams crossing multiple time zones. It's not been great. Especially going west. And so I like Washington to win this by about 2 touchdowns. I think they're going to have too much offense for Rutgers. I don't think Rutgers is going to be able to score with them. I think something probably clicked for them in the second half against Maryland and gives them some confidence, momentum. coming into this game. And again, home game, night game, yeah, short week, I guess. If not short week, but Friday night being a little off schedule, out of routine. I think that's all going to favor Washington this weekend. So that's my pick there. Big noon kickoff. Ohio State. It's the only noon. It's one of 2 noon games in the Big Ten this weekend. Mm-hmm. So they've kind of cleared the way a lot for this matchup. But big noon kickoff. Ohio State at Illinois. Obviously, Ohio State is number 1 and undefeated. Illinois 5-1, 2-1 in Big Ten, 17 in the country. Ohio State is a 14.5-point favorite as we record this. Ohio State did a great job last week of not letting that Minnesota game, get interesting and not falling into the trap of, coming off the big road win out west against Washington and then coming home and getting nice and comfy before you have to hit the road for another tough test at Illinois. They took care of their business last week. This seems like a team that doesn't lose focus. And so I don't know that Illinois is going to be able to catch them off guard. I don't think it's going to be a game where you see like Ohio State sleepwalking. It is an 11 a.m. Eastern kick. Does that impact things? I don't know. You wouldn't really think so, but what is Illinois' path here to an upset?
I think Illinois' path to an upset is going to be figuring out how to, if you're Illinois on offense, to get the ball out of Luke Altmaier's hands quickly. And I'm not trying to imply that he hasn't been decisive because he hasn't thrown an interception. So he's played very well. But I think against this Ohio State defense that is shown, I don't want to say that they have no weaknesses, but when you consider, they're strong in at all 3 levels on the defensive front. I think Illinois, a path to an upset is going to be maybe trying to run tempo. And there's some danger to that. If you all of a sudden sputter on first and second down, and now you're putting your defense out on the field, have you really gained anything? So the reason I'm kind of stuttering and stammering over it in terms of what the answer is because I really don't know what the path to an upset is besides kind of what I just said. Maybe running some tempo to try and catch Ohio State off guard, limit their substitutions. Maybe if you have some trick plays, special teams are always something that you have to be concerned about when you're going on the road. But I think that Ohio State, I think this is going to be a game for sure, at least through, I'm going to say through at least through the third quarter, and then Ohio State's going to pull away. But yeah, I think Illinois, what they want to do is maybe to, I guess, in the big picture of things, to stay in consideration for the college football playoff. Maybe if they lose, but not as decisively, as grotesquely as they did at Indiana a few weeks ago, that might keep them in a positive frame of mind for the committee on the college football playoff.
Yeah, if they're competitive in a losing effort, and then they can rattle off
the table.
They got to run the table at that point. I think they're in. Again, I'm predicting a 3-loss team gets in this year. Every week we see the SEC just kind of continue to cannibalize each other. We see the Big 12 continue to cannibalize each other. The ACC is a mess. I don't see, there's like 2 teams in the ACC right now that I think have a chance. And maybe you could argue Florida State's a third if they can win out. But like Miami and Georgia Tech feel like the only 2 that are really pushing the envelope there. I don't know what the Big 12 is going to look like by the end of the year. I have a feeling that we may even get a Utah-Texas Tech rematch in that championship game there. So I don't know that the Big 12 is going to have a ton of contenders. And so it's going to be interesting to me. So this is a big one for Illinois to make sure they don't get blown out, run out of the building. And I don't really think they will. But here's where I think Illinois is going to have some issues. Their defense is not playing as well this year as people thought. We all thought their defense would be really good this year. It hasn't been yet. their offense has been very good. Receivers have been good. Luke Altmaier's been very good. The running game, I mean, everything's been really good offensively. But I don't know how you beat Ohio State with an average to below average defense. Like I think if Ohio State's going to lose this year, I think it's going to be to a team that has a great defense and is able to just win an ugly, low-scoring game. If you're planning to get to the 25, 30 points, which, if your defense isn't up to snuff, you're going to have to beat them. Who's going to do that?
I think to your point, I mean, because Minnesota kind of, I don't want to say that they gave the blueprint, but in a manner of speaking, you can see teams, and I get it. I understand the idea. We're not going to let Jeremiah Smith beat us, so we're going to double cover him with safety help. That's fine. It's great it's great in theory. Now what you have done is you have basically put all your other defenders in one-on-one coverage. I mean, arguably against, if Jeremiah Smith is number one, Carnell Tate is making a legitimate argument to be 1A at wide receiver. You've got Max Clare. Then we're not even talking about the running backs out of the backfield. So, I mean, you like, to your point, Mark, you've made your defense even more susceptible to an onslaught of tremendous talent. So I don't know what the answer is. I think, to try and kind of getting back to the point that I made, that you try to defend as much as you can, try to be creative and hopefully not lose by an exorbitant amount. But I think you're right. I think the team that eventually beats Ohio State is going to be a team that is capable of, if not necessarily defending everyone one-on-one, but slowing the game down and playing a real physical style of defense against that Ohio State offense.
Yeah, I just don't know that Illinois is equipped to do that this year. I thought they would be at the beginning of the year with their defense, but it just hasn't played well enough, in my opinion, for them to win this game. And, Ohio State's starting to figure things out even more, seems week to week. Julian Sands seems to get better. Now, we'll see. Weird things have happened when Ohio State's played Illinois over the years. It feels like the teams that have maybe cost Ohio State the most over the years are programs like Illinois and Purdue, and not so much the Penn States and the Michigans until very recently. But even then, they lose to Michigan last year and won the championship. So, it feels like it's historically been these types of teams. But Illinois is, again, on a different wavelength this year than they have been recently. So I think they're going to have Ohio State's full attention. They're going to have to steal some possessions somewhere. They're going to have, fake punt, going forward on being aggressive on 4th and short, 4th and 3 and less, being aggressive on 4th down decisions. They're going to have to win the turnover battle. They're going to have a lot of things go right for them, but but most important, if I could just sum it up in kind of one sentence, it would be they're going to have to steal possessions. I think that's the only way they can win this game. I just don't see this Ohio State defense yielding that many points. We haven't seen it yet. Now, maybe there's some things that haven't been exposed yet that we're not aware of right now, and Illinois can find some things, but it's a very hard defense to match up with. And again, I just think the team that beats Ohio State this year, if there is one, is the team that wins like 17-14 or something. Like, I don't think it's a team. I don't think it's going to be a 35-31 game. I just don't. Once you start talking about getting in the 20s and 30s, it's a huge advantage Ohio State, because it's not going to get. They're just not going to give up that many points. So we'll see. I do like the way Luke Altmaier is playing. I'm still a pretty big fan of this Illinois team, but I don't know that Saturday is going to be the day that we see Ohio State go down. So we'll see. I don't. The spread's 14.5. That's a weird number. I'm probably not touching that. It feels right, honestly. It feels about right to me. So I don't know that I would really touch that, but I don't know. We'll see. See what happens. Saturday afternoon will be a big one for both teams. Obviously, Ohio State, they do not play Oregon or Indiana, which is a blessing and a curse. It's helpful in some regards, but if you lose a game like to Illinois, you really put yourself behind the 8 ball because you don't play Oregon and Indiana, so you don't get to have a chance to give them a loss. So it can cut both ways on that. So big game for both teams, and looking forward to it. The other noon game on Big Ten Network, UCLA at Michigan State, 1-4 UCLA, 3-2 Michigan State. UCLA a shocking 1-1 in Big Ten play after that huge upset against Penn State last week. Michigan State 0-2, very tough start to their conference schedule, having to go out to USC and then having to go to Nebraska. Now they get to come home and play UCLA, riding high off that upset. Michigan State a 7.5-point favorite. Chip, was last week a fluke, or does UCLA turn things around and continue to reel off some wins?
I don't think it was a fluke. I think UCLA outplayed Penn State last week. Now, the other part of your question, do they continue to turn it around, remains to be seen, because my skepticism is less in the talent on UCLA and more on the ability of that interim coaching staff being able to bring everyone back down and be focused. We talked about the cross-country travel, that's an issue. And I believe Michigan State, I realize I sound like a broken record here. I think they are better than their record actually is. And I think that they're certainly pointed in the right direction. This is a game that I think if every game is important within the Big Ten, obviously, but if you're Michigan State, I think you're the ones feeling the pressure to win simply because it's a home game. You're up against a team that was struggling, didn't look good in the very beginning of the season. So I think if you're Michigan State, the pressure is on you in front of your home crowd. And I believe the Spartans are going to do it, but it's going to be interesting to see how UCLA handles prosperity. Let's just say it, in that way, because it's one of these things where you see so many teams often that they just cannot move forward. In Penn State's case, it was a loss, but in some cases, like in UCLA's case, can they handle the fact that all the adulation that they've been deservedly receiving this past week?
Yeah, definitely. And now they're going cross country. They're traveling across 3 time zones, playing a game that's essentially at 9 a.m. on their body clock. I like Michigan State here. I agree. It wouldn't be fair to call last week a fluke because they did play so well. But I don't see them rebounding and, becoming a 5-6 win team this year.
No.
This is a must win for Michigan State. However, you have to win these games. If you want to be a bowl team and you want to, continue to work your way up the ladder under Jonathan Smith, he's got to win this game. I know the fans are getting a little impatient up there already, and 2 losses out of the gate in conference play is not going to help that. But he could help himself a lot this weekend because if he loses this one, they're going to be out with the pitchforks, I think. So I've got Michigan State winning. I'm not gonna buy that last week is going to be duplicated. I just can't after watching the first few weeks. Big one at 3:30. Actually, there's really 2 big ones at 3:30, but the big one, the game of the week nationally, 3:30 CBS, Indiana at Oregon, both undefeated. Indiana 7-0, or I'm sorry, number 7. Oregon number 3, both 5-0, 2-0 in Big Ten play. Oregon a 6.5-point favorite currently as we sit here and record. Indiana trying as hard as possible to play the big underdog card, and no one's giving us a chance, and we're so disrespected. And I've been listening to a few of their coaches talk throughout the week, and boy, they are really it's not even mainstream. Like, I haven't heard much mainstream people lacking belief in them. And so it's almost like they're just like almost manufacturing it, or they're looking deep into the interwebs to find somebody somewhere saying something that they can't hang to try and manufacture some motivation for this. But yeah, they have the chip on their shoulder. What has to happen for Indiana to pull off the upset?
I think kind of what we talked about with Illinois. I think Indiana has to steal some possessions. I think turnovers, and they have to. I think it's one of these things where Indiana, they're playing the disrespect card, but a reality of what happened to them last year when they went to Ohio State, the crowd noise affected them. So they're going to have to withstand, and I don't want to say an early barrage, but I'm going to say a continual barrage of noise, because those fans in the stands at Oregon are among the most raucous and loud college football fans in a good way, to make, harassing the opposition. So I think Indiana has to do all those things that we talked about with regards to Illinois, as well as the fact that, okay, withstanding the crowd noise. I like Oregon simply because of, the fact that I think that they are really starting to evolve and mature into one of the best teams in college football. I know that they're highly ranked already, but I really do believe that win at Penn State just kind of, I think it has a galvanizing effect. And kind of what I said a few moments ago about UCLA, it's going to be interesting to see if Dan Lanning can make sure that his guys are not still, basking in the glory of that, I don't want to say improbable win, but that challenging win at Penn State, that they are properly focused. So I'm going to go with Oregon, but I think that spread, like touchdown, that seems about right. I think Indiana's going to throw everything they've got at them, and I'm just looking forward to a great game.
Yeah, I really hope it is a great game. I hope it lives up to the billing. Obviously, Dante Moore versus Fernando Mendoza is going to be tremendous. I think, obviously, whichever quarterback, I think it's going to be a very quarterback-driven game. One of these two guys is going to have to step up and make some really big plays, and the guy who does that, their team's going to win. I like Oregon as well. I actually, they both had byes last week. I think the bye was probably better for Oregon, just because of that cross-country trip to Penn State and having a week to kind of reset, versus having to go right back out there. Indiana barely survived at Iowa, which wasn't one of their better performances this season, that's for sure. But I like Oregon coming off the bye at home. Just feels like the types of games. The coaches are both loud, which I actually like. So it's like interesting to me. Like Lanning and Cignetti are both willing to kind of put it out there. These are the types of games I think Lanning kind of lives for personally. But I just think Oregon's got too much firepower. I do. And I think Oregon's going to win. I think they're probably going to cover. But I'm hoping that it's one of those late covers where it's, a 7-point game going into the fourth quarter and they get a late one or something. But I like Oregon, and I don't know. I mean, Indiana's got a path here. The path is to establish Roman Hemby, to give Oregon a little bit more to think about than just getting after Mendoza. So try and get some of your run game going a little bit. Stay balanced. I think that's going to be a big thing. And then obviously they got to get after Dante Moore. They don't want to be covering for long stretches of time with those Oregon receivers and the creativity that Dante Moore has and that Will Stein has at offensive coordinator. So I'm looking at this as a game that, again, establish the run, use play action or whatever you build off of that, and get after Dante Moore. If they can do both of those things, I think they're going to have a shot. But I think Oregon's going to win this game. Also at 3:30, Northwestern at Penn State. And this is actually more interesting than it would have been a week ago. Penn State 21.5-point home favorite. Penn State 0-2 in Big Ten play, 3-2 overall. Northwestern 3-2 overall, 1-1 in Big Ten play. Now, I know Penn State came out and they played Oregon right out of the gate in conference play, but who on their bingo card had Northwestern ahead of Penn State in the standings in October? Not me. Here we go. Can Penn State pass Northwestern in the Big Ten standings this week?
Yeah, and I think for the Penn State coaches and players, I think that it almost is a requirement that they come out and just take it to the Wildcats. I genuinely feel sorry for Northwestern to be kind of in the face of what looks to be a very determined, very angry Penn State team. Now, if Penn State comes out sluggish, like they didn't necessarily, we talked about this previously, they didn't look dominating in their non-conference games. They didn't play well at the beginning of the Oregon game. Obviously, the UCLA game is well documented. So Penn State, I think they need to quiet the critics, and a lot of the critics are going to be in their home stadium. I think Penn State needs to come out and take care of business right away.
They have to start fast, because if they don't, that stadium's going to turn on them. Mm-hmm. There's no other way to put it. And, they're saying the same things they said a week ago, which we're regrouping. This team hasn't lost focus. This is a resilient group. And like we heard that last week, and they went out and laid just the egg of all eggs against UCLA. I can't fathom they lose this game at home to Northwestern, but again, if they get off to a slow start, I mean, Northwestern's got to be thinking, boy, we've got nothing to lose here. And it's kind of a wounded animal in Penn State. And if we can frustrate them in that first 10 minutes of that game, the fans are going to turn on them. It's not going to be it's not really going to be much of a home game anymore. What can we do early? What trick plays can we run? What fake punts, whatever can we do early to get these fans to turn on their team and get some doubt to creep into Penn State's mind after what happened last weekend? But yeah, I got to go with Penn State here. Again, Northwestern's firepower it's just not there. It's unfathomable for me that they would lose this game. I just can't believe that this could be possible. So Penn State big in my opinion, but we'll see. Another 3:30 game here. This one, I actually really like this one. I'll probably spend a good amount of time watching it. Nebraska at Maryland, 3:30, Big Ten Network. Both teams 4-1 overall, 1-1 in the Big Ten. Neither team ranked at the moment. This is an interesting spread. Nebraska's a 6.5-point road favorite here, which I'm a little surprised. I wasn't sure they'd even be a favorite.
Yeah, that's. I'll say this much. I think that's higher than I would have. I would feel comfortable if I was the gambling type. I wouldn't feel comfortable with that. I think this game, it's one of these things where Nebraska, I mean, they're, from what I understand, they are actually going out ahead of time to try and minimize any kind of travel issues. And it's not even cross country. It's the middle of the country to, the eastern part of the country. And I'm not trying to suggest that travel concerns aren't something that you should not take seriously. But yeah, I'm kind of surprised because Maryland had that game last week well in hand against Washington and let it all slip away. So, for Nebraska to go on the road, pull it out, I think it's going to be interesting to see.
This is a gut check for Maryland right now because you can't let Washington beat you twice here. And I think it's going to be really hard to bounce back. We've kind of seen this out of this program under Mike Locksley before. So until I see different, I'm going to have to go with Nebraska as well. And Nebraska, I think, is probably feeling pretty good about itself right now, the start they've had to the season and kind of where they're at right now. It's not all the way back, of course, but Matt Rule's got things going in the right direction. And I'm going to go with Nebraska by a touchdown. I think that 6.5 is just about right. It's a little higher than I would have expected, just in my head, but I think that is actually, as I talk through it, I think it's right, but I thought this would be a 2 or 3 point spread.
That's exactly what I was thinking as well, is that I thought it'd be like a 3 point. Like
Nebraska's a bigger favorite than Washington was at Maryland last week. And that I guess maybe the extra travel. I don't know. I don't know what the logic was behind that. Maybe Vegas thinks Nebraska's better than Washington. That's possible. All right, so we got 3 left. We got the night slate. Some interesting games Saturday night. First one up, FS1, 7 p.m., 3-2 Iowa at 2-3 Wisconsin. Wisconsin looking for its first Big Ten win after quitting and deciding it didn't want to try to win the game last week against Michigan. Boy, is this the fishy Big Ten line of the week. Iowa -3.5. That's it. At Wisconsin at night. Chip, is Vegas telling us that Wisconsin is going to get a W?
I think they are. I really do. I think Wisconsin, I know the criticism is warranted. But let's face it, I think Iowa, I haven't seen anything. Maybe you've seen differently. Mark Gronowski, the health at the quarterback position. Iowa wasn't necessarily setting the world on fire on offense even before he got hurt. So I think that maybe the Vegas odds makers are looking at this and saying, okay, Iowa offensively struggles. It's at Camp Randall. It's at night. Luke Fickell's team their backs are up against the wall. So that might be why the point spread there. So I'm going to go with Wisconsin just because all the reasons I just said. I think that they know that their season is going down the drain, and this is just more of a gut check and pride in front of their home crowd against a traditional rival.
I cannot in good faith reward Wisconsin with my pick after what I saw at the end of that Michigan game and taking your 3 timeouts home with you after making it interesting late and deciding you just weren't going to try to win. I'm going to go with Iowa. I think that 3.5 is a trap. I think a lot of people are going to be like, ooh, you have 3.5. I get that extra half on that field goal. And I think it's a trap. I think Iowa's going to win. I think Iowa's going to win by at least a touchdown. And I think the drum beats for Fickell are going to continue to get louder. 7:30 on NBC. We got a really good one. I'm looking forward to this one. Number 15, Michigan, 4-1, 2-0 in Big Ten. At USC, 4-1, 2-1 Big Ten. Chip, USC, a 2.5-point favorite.
That sounds about right, though. That sounds about right in terms of on the gambling side. I think USC, we were just talking about backs to the wall. They know that this stretch of games, I mean, that I don't want to say that they gave that Illinois game away, because I think Illinois, the reality is with the turnovers, Illinois should have won that game more convincingly than they did against USC. But I think if you're USC, you look at the remainder of the schedule, knowing full well, okay, after this, you have a non-conference game, but it's still, okay, you can't lose to Notre Dame. They still have to play Oregon. So with that one loss, they're starting to kind of think, okay, how much latitude do we have within the eyes of the College Football Playoff Committee? They really don't. So I'm going to go with USC, but I think this is going to go down to the wire.
Yeah, I think it's going to be close as well. But I'm going to go with Michigan. And the reason for me is these are the types of teams that Lincoln Riley loses to. I think Michigan's going to out-physical USC. They're going to get after their quarterback. They're going to disrupt things. And I still need to see USC line up and stop a big physical running football team. This is why I criticize games like these are exactly why I've criticized Lincoln Riley over the years. This feels like the type of team that beats Lincoln Riley, and everyone's like, "How did Michigan go out there and do this?" And you're like, "Well, they ran for 350 yards or something." They're very, very Utah-ish, and we've seen Utah kind of do that to USC over the years when they were Pac-12 and Lincoln Riley's teams, and I just think that's what's going to happen here. But okay. I do expect it to be pretty close. Last but not least, 7:30 Big Ten Network, Purdue at Minnesota. Purdue's 2-3, looking for its first Big Ten win. Minnesota 3-2, 1-1 in Big Ten after getting blown out at Ohio State. Minnesota 7.5-point favorite, a little low at home. And is Vegas telling us that maybe Ohio State beats Minnesota twice? I mean, that was a drubbing.
They could be, but I like Minnesota at home. I think that, say what you will about PJ Fleck, he's not everyone's cup of tea, but I think that he probably, if I had to speculate on what the conversation was, is, hey, we just got our what's handed to us on national television by the number one team in the country, but we can rebound, we can get back to basics, we can win at home against this much improved Purdue team. I know that we say that every week, but I think Purdue. I want to give a lot of credit to Barry Odom for the job that he is doing with that team. By this time last year, I mean, that team had pretty much QUIT it for the season, and that's not the case this year. So I'm going to go with Minnesota. It might be closer than Minnesota fans would like, but I do like the Golden Gophers at home.
I do too, and this is starting to probably feel empty for Purdue fans, but I continue to pick against them every week, but I continue to talk about how impressed I am with Barry Odom. So I'm doing it again this week. I apologize, but I do think Minnesota is going to regroup at home. Big night environment. I think Drake Lindsey is going to be a very good quarterback down the road. There's a lot of physical tools there. I think, again, getting back at home in front of the home fans and having a chance to kind of redeem yourselves after a really non-competitive game last week. And I just don't think Purdue quite has the horses yet, to win these types of games. I just don't. I think Minnesota's probably going to cover would be my guess. But again, the fact that we're talking about this in a way of Purdue could maybe go in there. I was expecting every week this year, nope, no chance. And sure enough, they're playing hard. He doesn't have the pieces yet. Barry Odom, he just doesn't quite have the pieces yet. And I like Minnesota at home in the night environment. All right, Chip, any parting thoughts as we descend upon maybe the best weekend of football in the Big Ten this year?
I'm going to just say that this, I don't want to call it necessarily an upset, but I would say if I had to kind of say the biggest coin flip game for me would be that Nebraska Maryland game, simply based on the fact that Maryland raced out to that huge lead against Washington last week. And you and I are both firmly on the Malik Washington bandwagon. I mean, I think he's a star in the making. So it's going to be interesting to see, like I said earlier, about, okay, are the travel concerns, warranted? Nebraska, I mean, they had their hands, I don't want to say full, but they had their challenges with Michigan State at home. So The fact that Maryland is at home I think this is going to be a game, bearing some eyes and ears on it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one as well. I want to see USC. I know I picked Michigan. I want to see USC step up to the plate physically. Don't let Michigan run the ball down your throat. Don't let Michigan's defensive line bully your offensive line. Go out there and win a game like this when you're still in the mix, because they lose this game, they're just about dead in the water.
Yep.
That's going to be what I'm looking for, to see if I have to eat crow on Lincoln Riley or not. But this is why I pick against them all the time, is games like this. So we'll see. That's the game I think is going to be really interesting. I'm very much looking forward to that game. So we will see how things play out. We'll be back here on Monday to recap everything and talk about what we learned and just give our reaction to all these great games this weekend. So thanks everyone again for watching and listening, and we'll talk to you soon.